Imagine a world teetering on the brink of collapse, a society fractured by inequality, where justice was a luxury and power an inherited right. Now, picture a desperate gamble, a series of radical experiments born not from grand philosophical ideals, but from the raw necessity of survival. This isn't a tale of wise men in togas handing down a perfect system. It's the gritty, often chaotic, and profoundly human story of how ancient Athens, against all odds, stumbled into democracy. It was a messy, radical, and often contradictory journey, yet it forged the very blueprint for our modern political world. This is the real, unvarnished account of how a city on the verge of tearing itself apart inadvertently created a legacy that continues to shape our understanding of governance, citizenship, and the enduring power of the people. To truly grasp the revolutionary nature of Athenian democracy, we must first transport ourselves to the world it emerged from. Forget the serene, white marble ruins we often envision. Instead, picture Athens in the 7th century BCE, a volatile pressure cooker, not a beacon of enlightened thought. This was a society ripe for upheaval, a tinderbox awaiting a spark. At the apex of this social hierarchy stood the Eupatridae, literally the well-born. These aristocratic families held an iron grip on every facet of Athenian life. Power was not earned through merit or public service. It was a birthright, passed down through generations. They controlled the most fertile lands, monopolized religious rituals, and, most critically, dictated the law. The law itself was not a codified, publicly accessible document. It was a private domain, interpreted and enforced by aristocratic magistrates who invariably favoured their own interests and those of their allies. Justice, in this system, was a commodity, accessible only to those with wealth and influence. Beneath this privileged elite, the vast majority of Athenian farmers were trapped in a relentless cycle of debt and despair. A single poor harvest, a sudden illness, or an unforeseen expense could plunge a small landowner into an inescapable spiral. They would be forced to borrow grain or seed from wealthy landowners with their land and, terrifyingly, their very freedom serving as collateral. If repayment failed, their land was seized, and they, along with their families, could be sold into slavery. This brutal practice, known as debt bondage, was systematically dismantling the social fabric of Athens. The resentment among the disenfranchised poor was palpable, simmering just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt into open revolt. Meanwhile, the wealthy, acutely aware of the growing unrest, clung ever more tightly to their privileges, fearing for their property and their lives. The escalating crisis reached such a fever pitch that, around 621 BCE, a lawmaker named Draco was appointed with the extraordinary mandate to codify the existing laws. This was a significant, albeit grim, step towards transparency. For the first time, legal principles were written down, making them theoretically accessible to all. However, Draco's laws were famously, indeed notoriously, harsh. So much so that his name has given us the enduring adjective draconian. Ancient accounts, though sometimes exaggerated, suggest that the penalty for even minor offences was often death. While the full extent of his code is lost to history, its spirit was undeniably brutal. This created a kind of grim equality in punishment. A nobleman and a commoner might face the same brutal fate. But it utterly failed to address the systemic economic inequality that was tearing the city apart. Athens was a deeply fractured society, a tinderbox of feuding clans and desperate citizens. Civil war was not merely a possibility, it felt like an inevitability. The city desperately needed a radical solution, or it risked consuming itself entirely. The path to Athenian democracy was not a sudden revelation, but a series of incremental, often reluctant reforms. It was a journey marked by political maneuvering, social upheaval, and the pragmatic decisions of leaders attempting to avert catastrophe. Into this maelstrom of social and economic strife stepped Solon, a figure of remarkable foresight and pragmatism. Solon was a respected aristocrat, but his experiences as a poet and a merchant had broadened his perspective, allowing him to empathize with the struggles of both the wealthy and the impoverished. Around 594 BCE, in an act of extraordinary trust and desperation, the Athenians granted Solon near absolute authority to overhaul their laws and restructure society, all in a desperate bid to prevent the looming civil war. Solon's most dramatic and immediate action was the Sisartheia, or the shaking off of burdens. With a single, audacious decree, he cancelled all existing debts, effectively wiping the slate clean for thousands of indebted citizens. Crucially, he banned the practice of using a person's freedom as collateral for loans, thereby eradicating debt bondage. He even went to great lengths, according to ancient sources, to track down and repatriate Athenians who had been sold into slavery abroad. This revolutionary act stabilized the city almost overnight, pulling countless citizens back from the brink of servitude and restoring a measure of hope. However, Solon, a pragmatist at heart, understood that this alone was insufficient. He was not seeking to dismantle the elite entirely. Rather, his goal was to achieve eunomia, or good order, through balance. He famously resisted calls from the poor to redistribute land from the wealthy, recognizing that such a radical move would only perpetuate the cycle of violence. Instead, Solon focused on fundamental political reform. He systematically undermined the absolute power of the hereditary aristocracy by reorganizing all Athenian citizens into 4 distinct classes, not based on birth, but on wealth. Specifically, the agricultural output of their land, measured in bushels of grain and jars of oil. This innovative system determined which political offices a citizen could hold. The top 2 classes were eligible for the highest magistracies, the archons, while the 3rd class could serve in a newly established council. But here lay the truly transformative element. Solon opened up the General Assembly, the ecclesia, to even the poorest class, the thetes. For the very first time, every male citizen, regardless of his family lineage or economic standing, possessed the right to attend and cast his vote in the primary political body of Athens. He further bolstered citizen participation by creating the Heliaia, a new court of appeal. Any citizen could bring a case before this court, even on behalf of another who had been wronged. This innovation served as a vital check on the power of aristocratic judges, marking a significant stride towards equality under the law. Solon's reforms did not establish a full democracy as we understand it today. That was not his explicit goal. He aimed for stability and justice. Yet, by granting all citizens a tangible stake in the system and a voice in the assembly, he laid the indispensable groundwork. He set Athens firmly on the path to democracy, even if he could not have foreseen its ultimate destination. Solon's reforms provided a much-needed respite, but they did not entirely extinguish the embers of aristocratic feuding. For several decades following his departure, powerful clans continued their internecine struggles for dominance, eventually leading to a period of tyranny under the popular leader Pisistratus and later his sons. When the Pisistratid tyrants were finally overthrown in 510 BCE, the old rivalries resurfaced with renewed ferocity. It was out of this renewed chaos in 508 BCE that a figure often hailed as the father of Athenian democracy emerged, Cleisthenes. Cleisthenes himself was an aristocrat, but he found himself on the losing side of a bitter political power struggle. In a move of profound political genius, and perhaps desperation, he made an unprecedented appeal directly to the demos, the common people. He promised them a genuine share in governmental power in exchange for their support against his aristocratic rivals. This was a monumental gamble, and it paid off spectacularly, fundamentally reshaping the political landscape of Athens. Cleisthenes astutely recognized that the root cause of Athens' perpetual instability lay in the old tribal system, which fostered loyalty based on family and geographical proximity. This archaic structure allowed powerful aristocratic clans to exert undue influence over the votes and allegiances of everyone within their traditional territories. To dismantle this entrenched power base, he devised a brilliantly complex, yet ultimately revolutionary solution. He abolished the 4 ancient hereditary tribes and replaced them with 10 entirely new ones. Crucially, these new tribes were not based on family ties or contiguous geographical areas. Instead, he ingeniously divided the entire region of Attica into 3 distinct zones: the urban centre, the city, the coastal areas, and the inland agricultural regions. Each of these zones was then subdivided into 10 smaller units called trities. Cleisthenes then constructed each of his 10 new tribes by randomly combining 1 trities from the city, 1 from the coast, and 1 from the inland area. This system, while initially confusing, had a profound and immediate impact. Suddenly, each new tribe became a microcosm of Athens itself, deliberately mixing rich and poor, urban dwellers and farmers, coastal traders, and inland peasants. A powerful aristocrat from the city could no longer rely solely on the loyalty of his local kin and neighbours, because his new tribesmen were now scattered across diverse geographical and economic backgrounds, possessing entirely different interests. This forced individuals to begin thinking and acting not as members of a narrow clan, but as citizens of a unified Athens. Cleisthenes literally redrew the political map to forge a new, overarching civic identity, fostering a sense of shared purpose and breaking the stranglehold of aristocratic factions. Upon this new foundation, Cleisthenes established the institutional pillars that would define Athenian democracy for centuries. His reforms led to the creation of the Council of 500, or the Bull. Each of the 10 new tribes would randomly select 50 of its members to serve on this council for a single year. The Bull was responsible for setting the agenda for the assembly, managing public finances, and overseeing the day-to-day administration of the city. Crucially, its members were chosen by sortition, a lottery, which became a defining characteristic of Athenian democracy. This method embodied the profound belief that any citizen, by virtue of his citizenship, was capable and worthy enough to contribute to the governance of the city. This council prepared legislation for the main legislative body, the assembly or ecclesia, which was now the ultimate sovereign authority in Athens. Every male citizen had the right to attend, speak, debate, and vote on all matters of state, from taxation to declarations of war. Finally, to safeguard this nascent system from any individual who might accumulate too much power, the practice of ostracism was introduced around this time, often attributed to Cleisthenes. Once a year, citizens could vote to exile any politician for 10 years without a trial. The individual did not even need to have committed a crime. Merely being perceived as a potential threat to the democracy was sufficient grounds for temporary banishment. It was the ultimate safeguard of the people's power, a stark reminder that no one was above the collective will of the demos. The democratic system initiated by Cleisthenes truly blossomed in the 5th century BCE, reaching its zenith under the charismatic leadership of the statesman Pericles. This period, often romanticized as the Golden Age of Athens, witnessed the construction of the Parthenon, the flourishing of tragic drama by Sophocles, and the philosophical inquiries of Socrates. Pericles further deepened the democratic ideal by introducing state pay for public service, particularly for jurors and members of the council. This was a monumental innovation, as it meant that poorer citizens could now afford to leave their farms or workshops to participate actively in politics, ensuring that governance was not merely the exclusive domain of the wealthy elite. In his famous funeral oration, eloquently recorded by the historian Thucydides, Pericles proudly articulated the Athenian ideal. Our constitution is called a democracy because power is in the hands not of a minority but of the whole people, he declared. We are all equal before the law. This statement encapsulates the aspirational core of Athenian democracy. However, it is imperative that we confront the uncomfortable realities and inherent contradictions of this golden age. When Pericles spoke of the whole people, his definition was radically different from our modern understanding. The stark truth is that Athenian democracy, for all its revolutionary ideals, was profoundly exclusive. Citizenship was a jealously guarded privilege. Indeed, under a law championed by Pericles himself in 451 BCE, one had to be an adult male born of two Athenian parents to qualify as a citizen. So, who was excluded from this celebrated democracy? The vast majority of individuals living within Athenian territory. Women, regardless of their social standing, possessed no political rights whatsoever and were largely confined to the domestic sphere. Metics, or resident foreigners, the skilled craftsmen, merchants and artisans who were indispensable to Athens' thriving economy, were denied the right to vote, hold office, or even own land. And most significantly, Athens was a slave-owning society on a massive scale. Historians estimate that a substantial portion of the population, perhaps as much as 1/3, consisted of enslaved individuals who possessed no rights, no freedom, and no voice. Their forced labour was the economic engine that powered Athenian society, effectively subsidising the leisure time that allowed citizen men to gather in the assembly and engage in political debate. Thus, for all its groundbreaking innovations, Athenian democracy was, in essence, an exclusive club built upon the foundational labour and disenfranchisement of women, foreigners, and enslaved people. It was not a democracy in our contemporary sense, but rather an exclusive citizencracy. Acknowledging these profound limitations is not to diminish its historical importance, but to view it with analytical rigour. A flawed, partial, yet undeniably pivotal first step in the long and complex evolution of self-governance. Given its inherent flaws and radical exclusivity, why does Athenian democracy continue to resonate so powerfully in our collective consciousness? Why do we, in the 21st century, still look back to this ancient experiment? The answer lies in the enduring power of the ideas born in Athens, which, despite their limited application at the time, created an essential blueprint for Western political thought. The core principles of their government were so potent, so fundamentally transformative, that they have echoed through the centuries, shaping our understanding of governance. Consider the very concept of active citizenship. For the ancient Greeks, a citizen was not merely an inhabitant of a particular place. A citizen was an active, engaged participant in the political life of the polis. It was considered both a duty and a virtue to immerse oneself in public affairs. This profound idea of civic responsibility, the notion that a healthy society requires the active involvement of its people, is a direct inheritance from Athens. When we encourage citizens today to vote, to serve on juries, to attend town halls, or to engage in community activism, we are channeling that ancient ideal of civic engagement. The Athenian assembly, the ecclesia, stands as a clear and undeniable forerunner to modern parliaments and congresses. The fundamental principle that laws should be crafted through open debate, where individuals can speak freely and the majority ultimately decides, was born on the Pnyx Hill in Athens. While we have transitioned from direct democracy to representative democracy, exchanging the town square for grand legislative chambers and electing representatives instead of all citizens showing up ourselves, the core process of public deliberation and collective decision-making finds its origins in ancient Athens. And what of the jury system, a cornerstone of modern justice? In Athens, major trials were decided by massive juries, often comprising hundreds or even thousands of citizens, selected by lot. The modern concept of a trial by a jury of one's peers directly echoes this Athenian practice, rooted in the profound belief that justice should emanate from the community itself, rather than from a single, potentially unaccountable ruler or magistrate. This system, though imperfect, aimed to ensure a measure of fairness and public trust in legal proceedings. The Athenians also pioneered robust mechanisms for accountability. Public officials were subject to rigorous audits at the end of their terms and could be removed from office for incompetence or corruption. This principle, that no one, regardless of their position, is above the law and that power must be held to account, is a foundational cornerstone of our modern systems of checks and balances, designed to prevent tyranny and abuse of authority. Over the centuries, these Athenian concepts were not merely preserved. They were picked up, adapted, and expanded upon by successive civilizations. The Roman Republic, with its own intricate blend of popular assemblies and an aristocratic senate, provided another crucial model for later political thinkers. Then, during the Enlightenment of the 18th century, philosophers like Locke, Rousseau, and Montesquieu explicitly looked back to Athens as they formulated their groundbreaking theories on liberty, natural rights, and government by the consent of the governed. While modern representative democracy also draws deeply from Roman legal traditions, medieval European parliamentary practices, and the development of constitutionalism, the language and many of the core conceptual frameworks often lead directly back to ancient Greece. The very words we use daily bear witness to this enduring legacy. The term democracy itself is derived from the Greek demos, the people, and kratos, power. When Abraham Lincoln, in his Gettysburg Address, famously defined democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people, he was articulating a sentiment first put into practice, however imperfectly, over 2,500 years earlier. While we have thankfully expanded the definition of the people to be far more inclusive, embracing universal suffrage and equal rights, the fundamental idea remains undeniably Greek. Even the critiques of democracy, first articulated by Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, remain remarkably relevant today. Plato, in his Republic, expressed profound concerns that democracy could easily devolve into mob rule, where the populace, swayed by emotion and charismatic but unscrupulous speakers, would make irrational decisions, leading to tyranny. He worried about the rise of dangerous demagogues. Aristotle, while more pragmatic, also cautioned against the tyranny of the majority, where the rights and interests of minority groups could be trampled by the popular vote. These ancient warnings about the dangers of populism, the spread of misinformation, and the inherent fragility of democratic systems feel eerily prescient in our contemporary political landscape. They serve as a timeless reminder that democracy is not a static achievement, but a dynamic, ongoing process requiring constant vigilance and cultivation. The journey from that chaotic city on the brink of civil war to the sophisticated, albeit exclusive democracy of Pericles' Athens was far from a straight line. It was a messy, imperfect process of trial and error, punctuated by periods of tyranny, aristocratic resurgence, and popular revolt. Athenian democracy, for all its brilliance, was often unstable, and it was formally dismantled by the Macedonian conquest in 322 BCE, though elements of its institutional memory and practices were revived in different forms later on. It was never a perfect system, nor was it intended to be a utopian ideal. Yet, its development represents one of the most profoundly important moments in the entire sweep of human history. The Athenians were the first to truly articulate and put into practice the radical idea that a community should govern itself. That political power ought to reside with the many, not merely the privileged few, and that active participation in public life is a shared responsibility of its citizens. They demonstrated for the first time that it was possible to construct a state founded not on divine right, inherited status, or brute military force, but on the principles of codified laws, open debate, and the collective will of its citizenry. They bequeathed to us the foundational concepts that underpin much of our modern political thought: the rule of law, the principle of trial by jury, the importance of political free speech, and the imperative of civic duty. They did not leave us a finished, perfect product. Rather, they left us an invaluable blueprint, a set of powerful, enduring ideas that Western civilization has spent the last 2.5 millennia wrestling with, debating, refining, and striving to perfect. Our modern democracies, with their universal suffrage, comprehensive human rights, and robust protections for individual liberties are the direct result of centuries of concerted effort to expand upon and improve the flawed but undeniably brilliant model that the ancient Greeks first dared to build. They showed us what was possible, and for that audacious, accidental revolution, we remain profoundly in their debt. If this journey through the origins of democracy has sparked your curiosity and you're eager to explore more stories about how the ancient world continues to shape our present, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below which other ancient civilizations or historical turning points you'd like us to analyze next. Your engagement fuels our exploration. Thanks for watching and for joining us on this intellectual adventure.